Hello, my name is Dr. Anna Maria Michalska. The purpose of this video is to draw attention to the crimes against humanity as related to the human blood. I have been investigating this crime, the self-assembling nanotechnology, the synthetic biology now for the last couple of years, and have compiled a library of documentation. My research, in collaboration with Clifford Carnicom, as well as others like Dr. David Nixon, have provided a tremendous amount of coherent and cohesive evidence that I would like to share here in an overview. My Substack, Anna Michalska, MD, PhD, .substack.com, has almost 250 articles that are documenting these crimes and explaining the technological and scientific background information that would explain this, as well as many, many interviews, many research articles that we have done in regards to experimentation as related to the human blood. So I would like to now share my screen and start this presentation. And what I would like to show is evidence of crimes against humanity via the method of dark field live blood analysis. First, I need to explain what certain terminologies mean. So self-assembly hydrogels are now a substance that is used in medical applications and technological applications. So it's a network of polymers, and polymers self-assemble to form something that's similar to plastic. And this is really what we found, for example, in regards to the clots that have been shown by the embalmer Richard Hirschman. So they are able to create biosensing devices, electronic devices. They're used in drug delivery, specifically the lipid nanoparticle technology in the Pfizer supposed mRNA bioweapon. That's really a hydrogel. Polyethylene glycol can be used as a hydrogel. SM-102 is a component of hydrogel, which is found in Moderna. And so this shows that the hydrogels can really self-assemble from a nano size, a billionth of a meter that we cannot see with an optical microscope, to extremely large sizes. I was sent a blood clot by Richard Hirschman that wasn't blood, and that was 33 inches long. So this material has been investigated by Mike Adams, and he found self-assembling polymers with metals consistent with also all of our findings. So what I want to discuss here is there have been physicians in the freedom movement who provide a lot of disinformation, saying that what we're seeing is salt and sugar crystals, and that's simply not true. They have not reviewed the literature. Hydrogel has been used to create microchips for biosensing applications, and this is an article that shows this. 26 teams around the world, there's more now, had evaluated the contents of the vials. And what is important to understand is that in the United States, for example, it's illegal to look at the vials because they are classified as a weapon. So they have dual purpose application that can be civilian as well as a military application. And so anybody who's looking at the vials could potentially be prosecuted. This is the case around the world, and so it was very challenging for many of us to really evaluate what was in these shots. However, many brave individuals have done so, and they found RNA was sequenced from some vials. There were vials that had no molecules of life, no phosphorus and no nitrogen, which means that there was no mRNA in them. There was RNA sequence from some vials, but they were not conforming to labels. So, for example, the European Medicine Commission discussed that they were truncated, they were fragments of RNA, and most of them did not have the appropriate size that it would take to create the mRNA to create a spike protein, which is the story that we've been told. There was DNA and protein impurities present, and many different heavy metals, so cesium, barium, cobalt, iron, chromium, titanium, cerium, gadolinium, aluminum, silicon, sulfur, thulium, and antimony were found. This is not the first time that so-called vaccines have been filled with undisclosed metals, but in fact, the nanopathologist Antonetta Gatti has published an analysis of 44 childhood vaccines, all of which were filled with different metals. And the weapons expert Mark Steele explains that the metals are a form of wetware. So they are used for facial recognition, satellite reconnaissance, and monitoring of individuals. It is known since 2006, the military has had the ability to monitor individuals from space, and based on the metal contents in their body, determine whether or not they were vaccinated or not. I'm a certified chelation practitioner. I detoxify people of these metals. They have substantial adverse health effects, neurologically, neurocognitively, accelerated aging, cancers, autoimmune diseases, all of which can be caused by them. Large structures were found by many teams within the vials as well as the blood, and these were like particles, crystals, filaments, fibers, ribbon, and self-assembly and movement and apparent intelligent design were seen. Graphene oxide is a component of the vials. As we know from the Pfizer document, they use graphene oxide and gold to create the spike protein that is then enveloped in a hydrogel capsule. So this is what has been found as a broad overview. This is the first time I saw the vial content, so I became friends with Dr. David Nixon in Australia, and one day during a Zoom call, he asked me if I wanted to take a look. And when I saw this was really, I immediately recognized that this was clearly not something that should be in a vaccine. You can see these metallic particles that are assembling this device here. You can see these blinking lights that are changing colors. And it's important to look at this here because these same blinking lights have been found not just in vaccinated, but also unvaccinated blood from this process called shedding. These bioweapons are self-spreading. And what you can see here is not just Brownian motion, but you can see these objects that are working to assemble this device here. There's optical properties, there is self-assembly. You can see how the lights are blinking, they're coming on and off. This is very important to understand that this was immediately visible, because these things are also seen in the blood, and many traditional live blood and practitioners are dismissing these findings, but they are absolutely crucial. I work very closely with Karen Kingston, who has provided enormous information over the last 2 years, showing quantum dot technology that's also self-assembling, as well as the hydrogel DARPA platform that can mimic all cells in the human body and basically fuses with them. So this background is important to understand and to look at, because in the human blood we see many of these background motion as well, and in traditional live blood analysis we are being taught that these are triglycerides, but if you can see, this is clearly a metallic object, and again these blinking lights coming on and off are part and parcel of this technology. So the next thing I want to show, this is a video that was created by Dr. David Nixon in Australia, and this shows a time-lapse video of the self-assembly of the microchip. I believe this is about 8 hours of video time compressed, and you can clearly see the robotic arms. We're going to watch this now. Is an image that was from the Pfizer vial. And what you can see here is this filamental structure that has grown and that's connecting these microchips that have been identified by multiple engineers as microtechnology that had self-assembled. We are aware of the Mach phenomena, where even deceased individuals, for example, the group Komosav that went to the cemetery, was able to pick up electronic signals from the deceased, that this technology is still active even when the person dies. And I've confirmed this in my live blood analysis findings, because I also have analyzed blood from deceased individuals, and I will show this later. So this is the filamental structure that we find in the blood. Initially, this was seen in vaccinated blood, but there was a historical context to this, because via geoengineering, these polymer filaments were also sprayed upon humanity for the last 30 years. So this has confused many live blood practitioners who have dismissed these findings as just dust particles. But I will show in video footage that these are not dust particles. And so these filaments then, through self-spreading mechanism, as well as the environmental contamination, were found in every unvaccinated individual. At this point, there's no human being on Earth who is not contaminated. According to Dan Wigginton from geoengineering.org, we are inhaling 20 million nanoparticles per breath. Our entire biosphere has been altered. We are at the point of almost no return towards extinction. This is why I am continuing to speak out, and I'm pleading with everyone who hasn't been brainwashed, indoctrinated, or who have sold their soul, that something must be done to stop this. What I want to also show here is, here's the filament, and there's many white blood cells that are dying here, trying to digest this polymer plastic. In the background, you see acidity and fibrin fibers. You can see that many of the red blood cells are deformed, or they are in what's called rouleau formation, in a state in which they cannot provide oxygen delivery to the tissues. You can see here some small spherical bubbles that come off of these filaments, and I will show later that these could be either part of the self-assembly. They could certainly carry toxins as well. La Quinta Columna has been a leader in the evaluation of the vials. They heated a drop of the contents, and these filamental structures develop, which is very important because we have confirmed the same findings. And I started working with Clifford Carnicom, who for 30 years has been researching the subject of Morgellons or cross-domain bacteria. The reason why I called it cross-domain bacteria was that clearly this was a synthetic biology that was sprayed via geoengineering, that had hundreds of thousands of people suffering from these strange filaments coming out of their skin, but they also had internal organ damage. They had chronic fatigue, brain fog, heart palpitations, exactly the same symptom complex that we're seeing now with long COVID. The growth structure of these filaments had features of archaea, eukaryotes, and bacteria. So that means all domains of life, and they were creating proteins. So they had fungal elements, they had bacterial elements, they had the ability to create toxins, and they're enveloped in a hydrogel form. So for example, Clifford Carnicom found that polyvinyl alcohol, which is a polymer plastic, was critical to the structure. So you can see that this was done in 2014, and that there is a marked similarity to the development of the C19 filaments in the vials from Pfizer. This is a correlation that I have drawn. So this right here is a filament that I have found in unvaccinated blood. Here you can see this bluish quantum dot-like structure that we're going to discuss further. You can see many bluish dots with reddish colors. You can see the central sort of hollow feature of this filament. Then this is the microscopy of some of Richard Hirschman's clots that Mike Adams did, and you can see similar features, this hollow internal aspect, and then this self-assembling polymer. And then this microscopy here was Clifford Carnicom's cross-domain bacteria or Morgellons investigation. These are some of the original research that Clifford Carnicom and I did together. So this was unvaccinated blood that appeared clean. And what he did was applied an extremely low-level electrical current for 2 hours at 10 milliamps. And the entire blood structure was transformed into a filament network that no longer had any blood in there. So what this shows is that all human beings are contaminated, and that electricity is one of the growth stimulators of this self-assembling polymer. This is something that David Nixon also showed. He showed that if he put a Faraday cage around the microscope slides that contained the Pfizer vials, that the growth would completely stop. In fact, that all the microchips and the filaments would disappear. If he pulled the Faraday cage off and then had the slide beside a router, they would reappear. So they had quantum properties. This is further research. So this is unvaccinated blood, and using voltammetry, which is this low-level electrical current. And there were layers that appeared within the blood, and the lowest layer showed we were able to isolate what's called this cross-domain bacteria. So from these filaments grow, and we showed this in multiple different settings, and all of that is documented in my Substack. So then we started doing near-infrared spectroscopy, and so when we isolated the cross-domain bacteria isolate from the unvaccinated blood, we did get a signature within the near-infrared spectrum, which is able to look at functional groups. And so these had hydrogel signatures in them. So now that we've analyzed the substrate and the isolate of the cross-domain bacteria, which is the origin of genesis for the filaments that we found in the blood, then we looked at vaccinated and unvaccinated blood, and determined whether or not there were any correlations of these signatures. And so we did find an identical match for hydrogel chemical groups, in particular alkenes and polyenes. So those are part of hydrogel compounds. For example, polyethylene glycol, which is part of the nanoparticle technology in the Pfizer vials, is a polyene. Polymeric alcohols is like polyvinyl alcohol, and then polyamides are also hydrogels. The interesting thing is that we also found a lot of methyl groups. Methyl groups are needed to repair DNA and create glutathione. So this filamental structure, this artificial synthetic life form, was hijacking methyl groups, and clearly there was quite a bit of this. So this confirmed that the signatures of the cross-domain bacteria, which is the origin of genesis for the filaments which contained these hydrogel signatures, were overlapping and found in both vaccinated and unvaccinated blood. And what was very interesting was that we really didn't find any difference between vaccinated and unvaccinated blood until later. So this is further studies of Clifford Carnicom and I. We did evaluation of electrical blood conductivity, which correlates as a measure of health. One of the historical findings of Clifford Carnicom was that the cross-domain bacteria, or Magellan's filaments, were changing the oxygen carrying capacity of the iron from an atomic state of 2+ to 3+, which is basically like, imagine rust, and it was not transporting oxygen. So if that happens, then you are also changing what's called the zeta potential of the red blood cells. The blood cells start clumping, and it's a measure of life force. And what Clifford did was he developed a mathematical model to correlate that with human power loss, or the loss of life force. And what you can see here is that the black line is the estimated power loss that's correlated to electrical conductivity. The green line is the normal range that would be expected, and the red line is what we found. So we, in unvaccinated blood, found numbers as low as 4.8 millisiemens. Just to explain, the normal range of electrical blood conductivity for humans is between 10 and 20 millisiemens. So let's say we took a conservative average of 15. Imagine how low 4.8 is. This is correlated symptomatically in my clinical practice with extreme fatigue, brain fog, accelerated aging. And so we have an assault on human life force, and human power loss is documented via this this synthetic biology. So it appears that it uses the human as a battery to create, to generate power to grow itself. So it's parasitic in nature, but it isn't a traditional parasite. This right here is the only difference that we found between vaccinated and unvaccinated blood. So we did impedance spectroscopy on vaccinated and unvaccinated blood, and subjected it to a range of frequencies to look at points of resonance, as well as, so resonance would be the point of maximum power transmission, but also to see if there was any electromagnetic changes that could give us some idea. And so what we found is we subjected the blood vials to frequencies ranging from 1 hertz to 25,000 hertz, and then observed what was happening in what frequency range. And if you see here in the extremely low frequency range between 2.5 to 5 hertz, in the range of the maximum one in the range of 4 hertz, we found substantial difference in how the vaccinated blood reacts. So this was proof that human beings who were injected have been electromagnetically altered. What is also interesting is Dr. Robert Becker, who wrote the book, The Body Electric, discussed cyclotronic resonance, and he looked at the resonant frequencies of certain molecules like potassium, sodium, chloride, and it turns out that potassium is the closest to 4 hertz to be manipulated by extremely low frequency. Around the world, there has been an ambient field found at around 4 hertz that is associated with HAARP, High Auroral Research Projects. And this is used for weather modification and weather warfare, but it can also be used for mind control as well as for DNA alteration. It causes substantial stress. I did an interview with Kathy O'Brien, who's an MK Ultra survivor and whistleblower and high-level intelligence agents, who discusses that the perpetrator of these crimes feed off of extremely low frequency, and they're endeavoring to bring all of humanity down to their level. So this is a very important finding that supports our notion of what Yuval Harari said, that the soul and the spirit and free will, they want to make this a thing of the past, and literally they want to mind control humanity. These are a series of experiments that were done with injected blood. So there were 3 different individuals, 30 milliliters were drawn in 4 different vials, and the blood was left to sit for 4 hours. And you can see here that the blood cells have deposited themselves in the lower aspect, and that there's a layer here that has formed that is separate from the plasma. And the clots look like this. So you can see that the blood is down here, and this plastic-like layer is right here. And we analyzed this, and this is just a video to show you that this is like a rubber. This is a plastic that develops in C19 injected blood. You cannot pull this apart. So I received from three separate vaccinated individuals these same clots that you just saw, and they were placed in formalin. You can see here that I'm holding the clot with this whitish appearance, and then I took different sample sizes and I put them on a microscope slide. Within this clot, I found the same nanotechnology fibers that we've seen in the blood, and you can see here the same filamental structures. We have a lot more of these kinds of samples also from Richard Hirschman's clots that we are still in the process of analyzing. But what's very important is that these clots clearly contained red blood cells, but also nanotechnological filaments. You can see here this blue filament from the clot, and this is unvaccinated blood. You can see anybody who's saying, oh, this is just a dust filament. No, you can see that this is a blue filament. We found these also to develop as the optical communication cables in between the microchips from the Pfizer vials. And so this is highly abnormal. This should not be in the blood. These are other examples. So this is someone who came to my office unvaccinated. You can see how the hydrogel had developed. You can see many of these blinking quantum dot lights, and they have self-assembled to create this red filament. This is within the blood. You can see a few red blood cells here in the background. This is an anti-nano device that's used to pulse electromagnetic fields to decontaminate people from nanotechnology. And you can see that the same fibers come out, which are classical Morgellons fibers or cross-domain bacteria. You can see that some of the filaments are whitish, some are red, some are dark, and some are blue. So presumably, the metal composition also in them is what determines their electronic device capabilities. Here you can see another blood sample from my office, this horrendous looking filament with rouleau formation, meaning total clumping of the red blood cells, extreme acidity in the background. And this was extracted from somebody with an anti-nano device, and you can see how similar this looks. This is clearly technological filaments. This was very interesting, and this provided a quantum leap in my evaluation of the blood and really understanding self-assembly, documenting it. So I received some embalmed blood from Richard Hirschman, and from an individual that had been deceased more than 8 months ago. And it came in a little vial, and it contained some embalming fluid. And so what you can see here, this is microscopic images of red blood cells that have been preserved, and many filaments, just like we see in now in live blood. They look exactly the same. You have exactly the same blinking lights that are present, that are self-assembling here. And what I documented was that the process of self-assembly doesn't stop. So this is someone who had died with these extremely long rubbery clots. And I have captured on video footage that actually this blood continues to be transformed. So what you can see here is something that I found in the blood, and it was moving. Even the red blood cells, that while they are lifeless, they were still moved around by this technology. Here you can see a classic quantum dot-like appearance, but this had developed. So these are spherical structures, and what I'm showing you here is that even though this is dead blood, you can see how here the spheres continue to develop, how whatever electromagnetic field they're creating, they're making the blood grow. You can see that there are particles similar to what we've seen in the Pfizer vials that are that are moving around. And you can see here how these spheres are being created and that they have contents of particles. And so when I saw this, I was just absolutely blown away, because this is showing, I'm going to speed it up, how much movement there is and how the self-assembly, this is maybe a 20 to 30-minute video, is continuing in this grid-like fashion. And all of these spheres are actually then later growing hydrogel structures and filaments, as I will be showing you in further documentation. So you can see this blood isn't dead, and it is kept alive. And you can see here, these are metallic objects, exactly like we were seeing in Dr. David Nixon's analysis of the Pfizer vials. Nobody can say, oh, this is food stuff. This person has been dead for more than 8 months. They haven't just had lunch. So these, all of these particles are part of the technology that helps with self-assembly. This is a close-up of these filaments, and you can see this is the highest magnification that I could get, that the lights are coming on and off. It's 100 times objective with oil, and that in here there's movement, there's ongoing assembly, there is optical voltaic properties, meaning changing colors from blue to green to yellow. So the reason why it is not as sharp is because this was an oil magnification. I couldn't get it any sharper than that, but you can see how many blue lights are changing to yellow lights. And so these are the spheres that we saw earlier that were self-assembling, and you can see these are the dead red blood cells that are still moving even though the individual has been dead for so long. So I call this zombie blood. So this right here is an image of an unvaccinated individual, and then once I saw it in the embalmed blood, I could immediately recognize. Earlier I was thinking these are just like bubbles that were captured with air from under the slide cover, but you can see that they're absolutely fluid filled with these metallic-like objects. And so what I want to show here is that one of these spheres has developed this hydrogel ribbon, and you can see the progression, that the material within it, you can see the blue and red blinking lights. This is a still shot. You can see the extreme toxicity to the red blood cells. They look very deformed, and how the hydrogel has been created out of the sphere to create the filament. Here you can see a further progression. You can see that multiple spheres have kind of spilled their innards to create this filament. You can see many smaller spheres that are continuing to replicate for self-assembly. So this is found in my patients who come to me with symptoms or want their blood checked. Again, since January of last year, I've not seen anybody who didn't have this in their blood, except if they were cleaned up with EDTA chelation, which is one of the antidotes that I have found to work very, very well. This is a higher magnification. You can see how the filament has developed, how multiple of these spheres have arranged. This is a perfect sphere here. The literature shows this clearly, that this is technological devices that are being used. So here you can see a closer up. This again, unvaccinated individuals. You can see the spheres, how they are spilling their innards to create this filaments, and this is why the blinking lights are found within the filaments. And then here's a sphere that also gave up some of its innards. You can see the red blinking lights, here you can see another image. You can see multiple of these spheres that intelligently have accumulated to create this hydrogel filament. ribbon. These are also part of this self-assembly, and it continues to expand in size. Here you can see an individual who had multiple of these spheres. The hydrogel was developed, and then it's creating here a filament, and you can see how toxic the blood looks in the background. So I am extremely concerned because I've seen an extreme acceleration of the toxicity of the blood and how bad it looks. You know, this classic toxic spike-like appearance of the red blood cells. You can see many of these spheres that are continuing to self-assemble this. This is microclotting. These are fibrin clots. So very, very concerning. This is another video of an individual, and you can see the amount of the hydrogel in the blood. So you can see how toxic the blood looks like, and then how many filaments you can see in different stages of self-assembly. This in the background, you can see this was somebody who just ate, but still you can see blinking lights, these little spheres. They are assembling to create the hydrogel. There's extreme toxicity seen, and there's just so much of this stuff, literally replacing now the blood in this network. And this is so large, you know, this can cause strokes, this can cause heart attacks. You can see here again how the lights change from blue to red to green. This is classic quantum dot technology, biosensing technology. This is very, very concerning. This is why I'm sounding the alarm, because everything that I have found in my research has been consistent. It is accelerating extremely. If the large-scale antidote like EDTA chelation isn't rolled out, I believe that we will continue to see mass casualties. This stuff is EMF responsive. It is HARP responsive. It can be manipulated with external electromagnetic fields. It can transform humans into cyborgs. This right here is another very concerning trend. So just over the last 2 weeks, I've seen more and more people where the blood is replaced by many of these spheres, and there's almost more spheres of this hydrogel self-assembly than there is blood. And you can see all of these blinking lights. They're all part of the quantum dot self-assembling technology, and you can see all of these spheres are in the process of assembling a network that basically replaces human tissue with hydrogel, and is very concerning. Here you can see how the hydrogel has been developed, but these are very early stages, and the blood is just being, you know, pushed aside in a sense, and the self-assembly continues within minutes of being on the slide. This right here is the embalmed blood, and what I wanted to show is that these spheres are actually, they can also look like this when they're in embalmed blood. You can see the round spheres, and then again, you know, this hydrogel-like substance is developed. But the reason why I know what to look for now in the living is because I found it in the dead. This right here is explaining the carbon nanofibers, which show that this bubble aspect is part of the self-assembling nanotechnology. And this is actually used as a battery. So it's almost like a process of electrolysis, where there's an electrical current being created that is oxidizing iron, which is exactly what we found in the human blood in our studies. And here what I want to show is, here is exactly what I just showed you. Here you can see the bubbles that are assembling this structure. They are clearly intelligent. They are involved in growing this and self-assembling this. It could be that these also contain toxins. You can see a lot of movement back here. But all of these are not blood cells. These are not bacteria. These are perfect spheres nanotechnological devices that are involved in the self-assembly to this hydrogel filament. And you can see how many of the quantum dot-like self-assembling technology has been incorporated into the filament, as I've shown earlier. You can see that this is a very active movement. Again, this was found in unvaccinated individuals that were exposed to shedding. So this technology is being replicated in the vaccinated individuals, and then they are a factory. We found this in blood, urine, sweat, in saliva, in sputum. They are exuding it, and then we are also getting it environmentally. We found it in rainwater, it was in the masks and the PCR swabs. So this is one aspect of the self-assembling mechanism. Here's a video on what really is a quantum dot, and I just wanted to play this here real quick. So what is important here to understand is that we're really also looking at this quantum dot technology here. And so what I'd like to show now is what I found in the blood. And you can see here, you can see these are bluish colored. They change colors to red, to yellow, and they are found everywhere in the human blood. They're part of self-assembling these structures. So there's no organic material in the human body that would blink like this and that would change colors. So this is self-assembled quantum dot technology. The quantum dots can assemble from nanometer size to a larger size. And because of their ability to modify light and change frequency signals, they are integral to changing also the human body, because we are frequency beings. And what you can see here is, for example, this clumped up red stuff, and all of these quantum dots are in here, and maybe they are a part and parcel of changing the electrical conductivity of the blood and giving its intelligent design. So this right here is a video of, again, all of these samples are unvaccinated, which is why this is so concerning. You can see extreme rouleau formation everywhere, and you can see this blue fiber, which is clearly nanotechnology, which is extremely long, thousands of times larger than a red blood cell, that grew out of this enormous sphere that had the quantum dot material and possible metals. You can see in the background there's many blinking lights here, quantum dots, as well as the toxic appearance of the red blood cell. So you can see here, this is the material that then is used to create the filament, and they have their instructions in terms of how and what kind of biosensing device they are creating. And some filaments are whitish, some are red, some are blue. Here's another video in a different state of self-assembling. So you can see here many of the quantum dots, and then you can see how they assembled to create this hydrogel filament that will continue to grow in size. And here's microclotting as well as rouleau formation. So what I want to show now is also a case history of the antidote. So Karen Kingston found in the patents that EDTA chelation is able to dissolve the hydrogel. I certainly found it very useful because so EDTA is a molecule that binds to metals. So if we just take the metals out, we can potentially dissolve the electronic properties of these devices and lower the toxicity for the human body. It appears that EDTA could be useful to dissolve the hydrogel as well as graphene, which is the carbon nanotubes. So we have a molecule that also is an electron donor, so it's electrically conductive and it can give back some of the hijacked electricity. So what I would like to show here is this is a provoked metals test after 1,500 milligrams of EDTA chelation. So at the beginning of therapies with my patients, I look at how much metals are we actually pulling out. And I just want to show the enormous metal contamination that can be found in people who eat organic, who, live a very clean life, in a rural area. But we are being sprayed like insects with this stuff. And you can see aluminum and barium are classic metals that have been found to be sprayed via geoengineering. Aluminum is a neurotoxin. All of these metals have synergistic toxicity. If you, for example, combine aluminum with mercury, you get the growth of enormous material that appears almost combustible, clearly toxic. Then if you see here, cesium can be radioactive. Uranium certainly is radioactive. In the last couple of years, I've seen an exponential increase in uranium. Tungsten is a metal that Mark Steele says the only reason to have that in your body is if it was used as a weapon against you. Things like platinum or other metals. This individual previously had chemotherapy, which is loaded with heavy metals, and these people need to detox. Lead, it can be found. It used to be in gasoline. It's in the soil. Its half-life in the body is more than 30 years. With gadolinium, which is the contrast material, radiologists know that this is neurotoxic. It has to be pulled out of the body. So what I just want to show is the hydrogel clearly has a lot of substrate to pull from the body to create electronic devices with this kind of a metal load. This is a video footage of what I've seen recently in the last couple of weeks of somebody who presented with chronic fatigue. Again, very healthy lifestyle. And the toxicity of the blood is so advanced that I find it literally scary. This is why I'm sounding the alarm as much as I can, and I hope you will share this video. So what you can see here, the extreme toxicity to the blood almost looks dead to me, extremely toxic. The red blood cells are deformed. You can see enormous amounts of hydrogel in here. You can see many quantum dots. The bluish lights here are visible everywhere. This is a complete technological assault on humanity. And again, I've never in my career, I've been a doctor more than 25 years, seen blood look like this clumped together, lifeless, like a mush. This does not transport oxygen. It's not compatible with life, really. And I think that that the danger is clearly increasing, even to the unvaccinated. I already have had patients die from shedding. This you can see again within the blood, and I've seen this more and more. You can see the spherical structure that is beginning to self-assemble a filament. And what you can see here is this extreme rouleau formation, and then the same round spheres that I showed you before, filled with quantum dot technology. Here you can see a bluish dot that's changing into a red color, which is transmitting electromagnetic frequency. I believe that they're controlling via artificial intelligence the growth of these filaments and external radiation. You can see here many quantum dots are linked here within the red blood cells and causing this rouleau-like formation. So this people like this have extreme fatigue. They really don't feel well, heart palpitations, all of the symptoms of what they call long COVID. In my mind, there was not a virus. There was a nanotechnological and synthetic biology assault. Karen Kingston has verified that literally Sir Francis Collins said in 2020 that they were able to create a quantum dot nanocrystal that would give an antibody response as if there was a coronavirus. However, there never was. We know that there was never a virus isolated. So we were attacked by a technological military grade weapon. This right here is after the treatment with my protocol. So the patient immediately got 1,500 milligrams of EDTA chelation with vitamin C and other B vitamins, as well as glutathione the first day. The second day, she got 20,000 milligrams of ascorbic acid. Also used a peptide called epithalon. The third day was a repeat EDTA chelation with glutathione. After 3 days, we repeated the live blood analysis, and it looked like this. So you can see now healthy blood. You can see these are white blood cells. The cells have normalized in their shape. This right here is just a reflection from the dark field condenser, but you can see a dramatic improvement here. You can see that the background looks excellent, no acidity. You can see that the red blood cells look healthy. They're transporting oxygen. They've been restored in their electric capacity. These are all white blood cells. They are natural. You can see that no hydrogel filaments have been found. Much reduced blinking lights like quantum dots, which were previously everywhere. You don't see really blue or red coloring except in very few places. So this is a dramatic improvement. This is what I have looked at over and over. And unfortunately, people need to continue to detox and decontaminate. I mean, I found these filaments in the meat supply. We found it in pharmaceutical medications, but this is truly a miraculous detoxification protocol that needs to be really deployed on a global scale to save humanity. It's the same individual, higher magnification. You can see that the blood has flow where earlier nothing was moving. When the red blood cells are touching each other, they are not clumping together. You can see still some microclotting. We use nattokinase for this, but clearly you can see a dramatic improvement. So even though there is so much evidence for crimes against humanity, there's also hope. I have provided extensive documentation about this on my Substack, and I wanted to just present this comprehensive overview of my research and the research of my colleagues. So for example, here this is improved blood, but you still can see that there's a quantum dot sitting there. So if this individual was to do nothing, eventually they would get recontaminated, and we have to continue to treat. So this is either way extreme hope. You remember how the red blood cells were looking of this individual. This is healthy, happy blood, really, really looking wonderful. And the patient was feeling much better. So I think that you know, I've shown this now over and over again, how well the EDTA intravenous chelation works. People are trying to use it orally. But if you're highly contaminated, you need a much higher dose. Imagine it, if I see this stuff in one drop of blood, so much hydrogel, you need a much higher doses of EDTA to actually have effectiveness, and you need to monitor people and show that their blood looks better. So this is just a representation. I cannot look at 6 liters of blood, but it certainly gives hope. It is my hope that people will share this information, and it is my hope that people wake up. Something must be done immediately, and the people must rise, because you're being poisoned, and the freedom movement is not giving the adequate treatment for this nanotechnological assault. And I think that we need to very broadly apply EDTA chelation intravenously, certainly study it further. But we don't have much time, because the exponential worsening of the blood that I have seen now in the last weeks is extremely concerning. And we must take into consideration that all of us need to unite. I am building an organization called Humanity United now. We're really, regardless of our denomination, language, skin color, wherever we live, we are all human beings. We're divine, and we are fighting for our survival. We must rise against this. Thank you so much for listening, and please share this everywhere.